Namaskar, everyone. Today, in our ZoomDub program, I welcome each one of you. ZoomDub, as you know, is a program that was created by KOA to connect the global Kashmiri community together and discuss and debate the critical issues which are important to us, and they are for wider awareness and possible solutions. The name is reminiscent of ZoomDub, a program which was created, which was conceived by the legendary Pushkar Ban as we were growing up and listening to it. This year, ZoomDub will continue to evolve, its format and bring forth social, cultural, and current affairs pertinent to Kashmiri Pandits in front of you. In today's program, we have a very eminent and a prominent personality here who does not need any introduction, Dr. Subash Kak. Dr. Subash Kak is a scientist. He's a Vedic scholar, recipient of Padma Shri in 2019. He's been described as a Renaissance man. Subhashji is a Regents Professor of Computer Sciences at the Oklahoma State University. I've had the honor of interviewing Subhashji 2 years back, and personally, I have talked to him about many topics, and as you all are, I'm very curious and want to know so much more about what he has written and what he is thinking all the time. He's born and brought up in Srinagar, educated partly in Srinagar, completed his PhD in electrical engineering in IIT Delhi. From 1975 to 76, he was a visiting faculty professor in London's Imperial College and also a researcher at Tata Institute of Research in India. From 1979 to 2007, he was a distinguished professor at Louisiana State University. Subhashji's research spans from cryptography to various fields of artificial intelligence, neural networking, quantum physics, and so much more. He is also the inventor of instantaneously trained neural network, a subcategory of AI for which there are a variety of applications, and he has a patent for that. While Subhashji has received so much attention and acclaim for his work and in the field of quantum systems, his work in astronomy and Vedic philosophy has also been very well recognized and appreciated. In 2008, he was appointed one of the principal editors of ICOMOS, a project of UNESCO. Currently, he also is a member of PM Modi's Science, Technology and Innovation Advisory Council. Subhashji is a prolific writer and has authored about 12 to 15 books, maybe more. And some of the books that he has authored I'm going to name only some of them: In Search of the Cradle of Civilization, Prajna Sutra, Architecture of Knowledge, Secret of Ishwar, Gods Within, Astronomical Code of Rigveda, The Wishing Tree. He also is a poet. He has written Matter and Mind and many more books. He also regularly contributes to magazines and other publications, and almost on a daily basis, I see an article written by Subhashji in some magazine or the other. Without taking much time, I want to introduce our moderator for today. We'll be conducting the interview with Subhashji. Sanjay Kaul from New Jersey. He is a co-communications director of KOA and has conducted many wonderful programs before. So Sanjay ji, please take it from here. Thank you, Subhashji. Thank you for honoring us today, and thank you, Sanjay ji, for conducting this program. And welcome to all.
Namaskar, Subhashji. It's really, thank you, Archana. It's really an honor, a privilege, and super proud that you are an alum of NIT Srinagar as well. And there are many in this forum today who are actually NIT Srinagar. So a great honor, and I'm very proud to be talking to you. I did go through the list of books and articles and listen to a couple of interviews, and everything seems so fascinating so interesting. And for some of us, I can say that the categorization of essays that you have put together is so expansive, so vast. And I
Folks who are not talking, please be on mute.
Okay, so so just a couple of names here: linguistic, Sanskrit and computer science, ancient astronomy, art and music, temple evolution and architecture, history of science and mathematics, and consciousness. So there's a lot of things we can talk about, but my hope and my effort will be to keep it related to consciousness, science, spirituality and Kashmir, which is so dear. और एक कोशिश ये भी रहेगी कि कुछ ऐसा सीख पाएं या जान पाएं जो हम अपने साथ ले जा सकें, because this topic can be very, very large to talk. So the first thing I'm going to talk about or ask you, Subhashji, is the wonder that was Kashmir, which was a 55 page essay that you had recently written.
Could you please unmute yourself?
Okay, should I continue?
Please.
Yeah. So this is a large essay, and it has many parts about heritage and the culture and the Shaivism. I thought one section was very interesting. It was cosmology and science and Yoga Vasishtha. There is a full section on that, and I did read it. Would you be so kind enough to talk about this in a way that our viewers or younger viewers can appreciate it?
Well, thank you very much, Archana ji, for having me on ZoomDub, and thank you very much, Sanjay ji, for the introduction. Yeah, that essay, The Wonder That Was Kashmir, it was written some time ago, and then I sort of updated it last year, and it has many sections. This particular section is on cosmology and Yoga Vasishtha. Now, Yoga Vasishtha, first of all, not everybody might have heard of it. Yoga Vasishtha is the third longest book in Sanskrit. The longest book is, of course, Mahabharata, or Mahabharat, which is 100,000 shlokas. The second longest, I think, is Ramayana. And the third longest, almost as long as Ramayana, is Yoga Vasishtha. Now, Yoga Vasishtha, according to all scholars, was written in Kashmir and written maybe sometime in the first millennium. And it has a frame story. The frame story is that Ram is depressed. He's come back from the ashram. I think he had gone to study in the forest. He's come back and he's very depressed, and he's saying, what is life all about? And so on, the kind of unhappiness that all young people have, sometime or the other. Hey, what's life all about? Now, we have done our study, so what am I to do with my life? So those are the questions. And so he goes to Vasishtha. Vasishtha is the great teacher in Dashrath's court. And Vasishtha then starts telling him stories. And so Yoga Vasishtha, which everybody must read, because in my view, it's and I'm a really very, very knowledgeable about world fictions. You go from Russian to French to German to Japanese to American. I know a lot about novels. In my view, Yoga Vasishtha is the greatest novel, greatest story ever written. Wow. And it's a story that you can get from the internet. There are also translations, State University of New York Press, abridged translation, not entire. So you can read it as a story. And for young people, that's the best way to obtain knowledge, is through story. And that's what Vasishtha did in instructing Ram out of his depression. So he says that, look, here's the story of such and such person, this is such and such happened, and so on. And then from one story, it goes to another, just as in Panchatantra, which is also supposed to have been written in Kashmir by Vishnu Sharma. So here, we don't know who the author was. Now, the story book is so full of deepest wisdom related to Kashmir Shaivism, for example. The deepest wisdom that you can imagine, that some people consider it a scripture. They say Yoga Vasishtha is in the same class as the other deepest books that we have from India. So this is basically what it is. So what is the cosmology? Cosmology is the same cosmology that we have in the Vedas, and that was a cosmology which was repackaged, so to speak, in my view, in Kashmir Shaivism, in the Yoga Sutras, and Shiva Sutras. Yoga Sutras are about yoga. So Shiva Sutras, and in Shiva Sutras, the basic, the very first sutra is Chaitanyam Atma. What is ye Atma kya hai? Ye Atma Chaitanya hai. Chaitanya means awareness. See, normally before that, a lot of people, or even when people are growing up in whatever religious tradition, so they are told, okay, you and your soul. But what is the soul? It's a kind of a mystery which is left unexplained. And then people are told that, okay, you be good or you do this, and then you'll be rewarded in one way or the other. The great sages of Kashmir met it head on. They said, your awareness is your Atma. Atma is not something hidden within you. Awareness itself is your Atma. Chaitanyam Atma. And so then the cosmology in Yoga Vasishta is that if awareness is Atma, then how do you explain all the complexity and all the paradoxes that are a part of the experience of each one of us, right? We have paradoxes, we want to obtain things, then we are also tired of it, right? There is a love and renunciation process that goes on. And the more attachment you have, the more grief you have. So how do we navigate in a way so that, first of all, we experience that infinite power of Shiva within us? The name of this Chaitanya, this Atma, is Shiva. Shiva is your core self. Now you might say, okay, if I'm Shiva, Shivoham, then why am I so stupid? Or why am I so full of grief, right? So the answer to that is that because you're not seeing yourself in your true manner, in the true manner. You have covered your own nature through attachment and through connections to things which are transitory, and the transitoriness of them is the source of your unhappiness. That if you could connect to your own self, there's a phrase that I encountered the other day, that if there were clean enough water and you look into this pool of water, you'll be able to see the wrinkles on your face and perhaps even the hair on your eyebrow. So likewise, if your mind mirror is clean, then you'll be able to see reality for what it is. If your mind mirror is not clean, then the dust is what we are seeing in our life. And we are unhappy about something which is not our true self.
Wow.
So these are all stories. Now, I don't have time to tell any of these stories, but you can, and I tell you, because this is a Kashmiri book, this is one of the greatest storybooks ever written, perhaps the greatest. Every Kashmiri should have it and take the pleasure of reading the stories.
Wow, wow. So fascinating. And, like for me and for many of us, when we think about Rama, we always go back to Ayodhya and, the whole thing. I never thought that a story about Rama could be written all the way in Kashmir, because...
Yeah, it's written in Kashmir, but it's the same story. It's Rama in Ayodhya who is depressed as a young man. So then Vasishta instructs him. So it's a story framed in Ayodhya, but written by the masters in Kashmir.
Wow, wow. Fascinating, fascinating. Okay, so I'm sure most of us had not heard about this, at least I had not. And I'm going to make an effort to read it. And definitely for all of us would be great. The second question also, or the second discussion point, also I would relate to the same essay, The Wonder That Was Kashmir. And it is a little bit more broader in scope. And you talk about Sharda Peeth a lot. And a lot of people have talked about Sharda Peeth, and most of us have not seen because it's not anymore in the part of Kashmir that is part of India for whatever reasons. And then there are, so Sharda Peeth was a seat of ancient seat of learning, and there were other seats of learning in India as well, such as Takshila and Nalanda and probably many others. So my question or my thought to you is, how do we connect these places of learning which existed at different times in India, and what was the how should I say, the science, the role of science, because we're talking about science and spirituality, the role of science in these places, how advanced was it, or what was comparative difference between the different schools of learning, somebody focused on history or somebody focused on music or dharma or whatever, if you can just mention some things on those lines.
Sure. Sharda Peeth on the edge of Kashmir Valley. It's only 10 miles from the line of control. And it's a very sad thing that in 1948, since this generals and the soldiers and people didn't know about it, they didn't make that further effort to cross and actually take this. And it's on the Kishan Ganga River. And since the Pakistanis hate anything to do with Ganga, they've renamed it Neelam River. So in Pakistan now it's called Neelam River. So it's on the banks of it. Now, this was a great center. Even Shankaracharya or Ramanujacharya, who started the second tradition associated with Vedanta, so Vishishta Advaita. So they all came to Sharda Peeth to get confirmation to their interpretation. So this was a great center. And that's about, say, 1200 years ago or 1000 years ago. But Sharda Peeth had been prominent for 1000 years prior. In fact, one can say with confidence that for about 1000 years, or maybe 1400 years, from 200 BC to 1200 CE, Kashmir was perhaps one of the most brilliant places on entire earth in terms of knowledge in a variety of fields, in fields ranging from mathematics to astronomy to music to architecture to philosophy. And we all know about Kashmir Shaivism, you know, the philosophy of Shiva and of awareness of reality, and sculpture, any other field that you can think of. In fact, you know, all the great temples that we have in India, with the great sculptures. There's no place in the world as amazing as the Indian temples. You go to South India, go to Karnataka, wherever, or Odisha, Jagannath Puri. The theory and the framework, the aesthetics framework for all these temples was created according to scholars in Kashmir in a huge Puran called Vishnu Dharmottara Puran. Now, let me return to your question. What did Sharda Peeth have to do, or what relation did it have with the other great universities? The other great universities, of course, in the east is Nalanda, which was a great center. And there were others in the east, like Vikramshil and so on. Now, in Northwest India, there was Sharda, and then there was Takshashila, or Taxila right now, Takshashila. Now, Takshashila is not that far from Sharda. And Takshashila was the very heart of what is called Gandhar. And Gandhar produced some of the greatest sculpture and beautiful stuff. In fact, one of the Gandhari structures was a temple that Kanishka built near Peshawar, which is almost exactly the same form, because we have drawings of it, inscribed drawings of it, which is almost the same form and the same dimensions, with 4 towers at the corners as Taj Mahal. You know, it's something very interesting that you might want to explore further. Now, according to many scholars, this Kashmir and Gandhar were a continuum. And in fact, there were some kings who ruled both of these regions. So this was classical Indian knowledge. And the great Sanskrit, you have one of the most amazing scholars of the entire history of mankind was a person called Panini, about 500 BCE. And he was born near Peshawar and so on. But the great commentary on his grammar, and this grammar is all of Sanskrit in 4,000 algebraic rules, which is like a computer program, etc., etc. Historians have always wondered about how did he create it in a vacuum. The fame of this book was due to a commentary on it, which explained it in a huge book called Mahabhashya by somebody called Patanjali, who is a Kashmiri, from Kashmir, from a village in Kashmir, because we know from the various references in Mahabhashya. So this whole grammatical tradition, which is a very significant tradition, came here. And so if you look at Takshashila as a continuum, so this is where some of the most amazing stuff was done, not just in the Orthodox Vedic tradition, but also the heterodox Buddhist tradition, because Buddhism to some is sort of a challenge to Hinduism, but in reality, Buddha himself on his deathbed accepted Atma, because the only difference, academic Buddhism, is that Buddhists don't accept Atma and Hindus do accept Atma. Otherwise, the whole mental structure, the structure of the personality, they have the 5 koshas, Annamaya, which is the physical body, Pranamaya, the various forces in the body, Manomaya, the mental body or the mind, then Vijnanamaya and Anandamaya koshas. These are 5 koshas within which constitute the person, and on top of that is the Atman. Now, according to some, the Orthodox academics in Buddhism, there's no Atma, but on his own deathbed, Buddha, and this is in Mahaparinirvana Sutra, he acknowledged, he says, well, I didn't tell you about Atma because you were too attached to various things. So just as if a baby is very sick and the baby should not have the mother's milk, you would put some bitter thing on the mother's breast. And then after the baby is cured, after taking medication, then the baby can come back to the breast milk once again. That's why for all these years, I wanted to cure you. I didn't tell you about the true secret. And the true secret is that there is something which is permanent, which is what Atma is. If you look at India versus the West is mainly about the body. And you have this body, and then you go to the heavens, paradise, you still have the same body, right? Some sense, you can't explain it logically. While in the Vedic view, you have the body plus the Atman. The body is Nashwar, is something which dies, but the Atma is Amar. That's why you say Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Or the body is darkness, Tamasoma Jyotir Gamaya, because Atma is light. Shiva is, another name for Shiva is Prakash, means light. In fact, if you read the Kashmir Shaivism text, so Shiva is called Prakash. And the body is called Vimarsha. So this Prakash is falling, is illuminating the body. And it's the meeting point of the light and the body, which is in our mind. The mind is the meeting point. The mind is also physical. Prakash is not physical. So it's at that meeting point that we are situated. So if you are able to calm your mind to the extent it is possible, that you become one with the light, that's when you become Shiva. That's when all grief goes away.
So what about the science part, Subhashji? Like they
have science is also Kashmir. I sometimes wonder. Kashmiris are a small group of people. Even now, Kashmir Valley has a population of 4 million. When I was growing up, maybe it was 2 million. So maybe 2,000 years ago, it was just a few 100,000. How could a group of people have done such incredible stuff in so many different fields? That, just to give you an example, look at the Chinese civilization, right? For 1,000 years, the Chinese were thirsting for Sanskrit scholars. This is an amazing chapter. So what Chinese civilization is now was created by these Sanskrit scholars. Amongst them, the greatest was one called Kumarajiv, who was a Kashmiri, half Kashmiri. His mother was from Khotan. But Khotan itself, which is Xinjiang, was a kind of an extension of Kashmir. Kashmiris were these smart people everywhere. Now, do you know, and you can check it for yourself, the greatest living American sinologist, scholar of China, is a professor at UPenn called Victor Meyer, M-A-I-R. Victor Meyer claims that 35,000 words of the Chinese language are derived from Sanskrit. Because when these scholars went to China, Chinese didn't have all these abstract notions. You know, we have amazing abstractions, abstract ideas. The Chinese were more into, you know, they're practical people. So they had to coin 35,000 different words and these 35,000 different symbols based on the sounds that they heard. And everything in China changed because of this stuff that was going from Kashmir. And do you know, even now, in China, Japan, Vietnam, every evening, they chant, just like we have bhajans, the Buddhists chant something called Nilakantha Dharani. In Nilakantha Dharani, the greatest bodhisattva is an abstraction of Buddha, and there could be many. The greatest bodhisattva is called Avalokiteshvara. Avalokiteshvara, Ava means down, Loki means looking, Ishvara, you know, in compassion. He's a model of compassion. Avalokiteshvara worships Harihara. Harihara is Vishnu and Shiva, and Nilakantha. In fact, this whole thing is called Nilakantha Dharani, and you might want to look it up. So he's worshipping Shiva for his compassion, for having drunk halahal poison to save humanity from suffering, because he holds it in his neck and it's full of such heat that his neck turns blue. That's why Shiva's name is Nilakantha. You know, another meaning of Nilakantha is that if you are Shivas, the reason why we are Nilakantha, what does it really mean? We are awareness. And this awareness also is attached to all this embodiment of Shiva, because what the great sages of Kashmir said, this body is not illusion, it's also an embodiment of Shiva. So you can also, you know, enjoy it. But we know that everything is going to go away. And that is that suffering, that is that poison that we must hold in our throats before we can go out and enjoy this world. You know, these are very subtle psychological truths as well. So science is anything that you can think of. Kashmir, just like the West for the past 100, 200 years, is the center for sciences. Kashmir for the entire world, for the Japanese, for the Slavs. Slavs are Eastern Europeans. Their chief divinity, what they call Shvetovid. Shvetovid means the knower of Shvet. Shvet is another word for light there. From Shvet comes white also, as we know. From Sanskrit, Shvet comes white. Shvetovid, meaning the knower of light, who is Shiva, right? Shiva is Prakash himself. So the central idea in all of this was, why do you represent Shiva with 5 faces, right? Shiva has 5 faces, if you know. That's one way, Panchamukha. And these mukhas are, one side is Sadyojat, you know, as a consciousness emerges when it's born, Sadyojat. Then you have Aghora, which is what is, Aghora means it's calm, but it's really the opposite of calm. It's Raudra, right? And then you have Tatpurush. And then you don't know where your consciousness is. It's hidden somewhere within you. That's called Tatpurush. And then the 4th phase is Vamadev. And Vamadev can also be Parvati. That is the Saumya face of Shiva. You know, and that's also if you're a man, that's your wife, because it's the wife who brings wisdom. Parvati brings wisdom. You know, Parvati is the soft side of Shiva.
Ardhanari, also they call him.
Yeah, and the 5th phase facing upwards is called Ishan. So Svetovid also has 4 faces, and they named it in Slavic language. The top one, the north one was called Swarog or Swarga. The west one was called Parjanya or Perkunis. The southern one was called Lada, which is another name for earth. And the east one is called Moksha. So just imagine these were guys going out all over, and they've transformed the world, which we are only now recognizing in how many ways they did it.
You also had talked about a lot of mathematics was being done in these places and a lot of science. So was the mathematics and all was happening around the same time or much later in Nalanda and
well, the history of Indian mathematics and astronomy, well, there are two aspects to astronomy. You know, if you are out in the dark, it's a clear sky, you see the movement of the stars, right? So you start looking at the stars, then you look at the movements of the sun and the moon, and that's what was done in Jyotish. You know, you have Tithi. Tithi is according to the movement of the moon, and the movement of the moon over a year, 12 cycles, is only 354 days, while the movement of the sun is 365 days. So that's how astronomy was born. And the earliest astronomy in India is Vedanga Jyotish, and that is dated to, or that is, you can see where it was based on its size of the sun and the size of the longest day to the shortest day. You know, the more north you go, the ratio of the longest to the shortest day becomes bigger and bigger, right? On the North Pole, you know, you're in Canada, the longest day is much longer than the shortest one. So from there, it appears this, the earliest Jyotish, which is called Vedanga Jyotish, was written somewhere in Kashmir. So that is really the beginning of Jyotish in India. This is about 1300 BC. And so there was a tradition of astronomy. Now the great astronomers such as Aryabhat or Varaha-Miher or Bhaskaracharya, they were elsewhere in India. They were not Kashmiris. So, you know, Kashmir was also a place which was, you know, in Kashmiri, of course, we used to call it, or my mother used to call it Reshivar, right? The Vatika of the Rishis. So there were people coming from all over. It's not necessarily looking at it from a ethnic perspective. This was a center because of its great climate and the fact that there were all these great sages already working there. And what can be more beautiful than having a great conversation? When I was growing up, what do you call it when people drop in? Sakhan chikaranas. That is what comfort, where does comfort come from?
Conversation.
From conversation. Kashmiris have always loved great conversation. So I think that was that was a great draw to get people.
So this question can go on. So I had to jump to the next question. But I think another thing I learned, which was a little bit digressing about the Nilkant part, and we always read that story that, you know, Shiva had to do this, but the analogy or the deeper meaning was, as you explained, the suffering one has to always remember as you enjoy the life. So I think that was for me a great takeaway, because I always wondered this Indian mythology that, you know, Shiva took the poison, and what does this all mean? I mean, it doesn't make any sense to a modern person. You take all the poison and, you know, but thank you for that. Really appreciate that. So I think the next thing is a little bit also can go in many different directions, but we'll try to stay focused. It's about consciousness. And you have written a lot and spoken a lot about science and Vedic India, our festivals, our rituals, and how consciousness is all connected. I read a little bit of it, you know. And please do not try to make it several notches down, because, you know, we have a wider audience and also the time limit, right? So, and the world is becoming very stressful. You know, work-life balance is anything but a reality in 2022. Everybody's working hard. Everybody's trying to, you know, do 1,000 things and be super efficient. And there are books you have, there are articles you have written, Universe, Quantum Physics and Consciousness, Mind and Reality. There's a lot of stuff. So what would you tell us in terms of how to use this Vedic connections and consciousness and become a better human being as we go through the life? Because that's what we want to know, understand, if we can, how it all comes together for us, you know.
Okay, Sanjay ji, you're right. You can look at it from so many different perspectives, right? And let me begin by going back to the Nilakanta story, just for a moment, very quickly. You know, all of that emerges, the poison emerges when they Asuras and the Devas are doing Samudra Manthan, right? Now, this Samudra Manthan, of course, we visualize that in some ancient times, there were these Devas, anthropomorphic forms, and then the Asuras, and they had this universal serpent, and they were twisting it. No, whatever happens in the cosmos happens within us. And I'm going to use that as a context to take off on consciousness. You have within each individual, within each one of us, two understanding of who you are. One is that you are your body. You know, we are our body. It's true. The other is that we are the experience of our body. So this is a kind of a contradiction. We are our body, but we are also watching our body through in our minds. So there is this manthan taking place between these two, because the devatas are our cognitive centers. The devas are the cognitive centers. So you think of your body and this, and it's through this manthan, it's through the tapas that an awareness of who you are, what consciousness means, emerges. Okay, because I could also say, well, how am I different from my dog? We are not different from our dog. Our dog has the same gamut of emotions, right? They also have love. They like food. They do this. They want exercise. They want to be hugged. How are we different at all? Now, the sages said dogs are domesticated animals are pashu. Pashu meaning a domesticated animal, even a horse or even a cow, even an elephant, huge elephant, once you tie a rope to it, can be led by a baby, because they'll just go where they are being taken. There are pictures, and you can Google it, pictures of a huge horse being led by a 2-year-old baby. The baby is holding the rope. So what the sages say is that humans are also pashu. Most of the time we are like pashu. We are no different from the animals. Then how do we discover our true self? What Kashmir Shaivism or what the Vedas says that we are more than pashu. We are not pashu, because so long as we are pashu, we are in tamas, we are in darkness. So how do we go to Jyoti? The Jyoti is Shiva within us. So we are pashu because we are bound, and the word in Sanskrit for bound is pash. Pash is the ropes to our instincts, to the karmic chain. Karma is reaction. Everybody's reacting to various things. So we are in the karmic chain. So we are pashu. When we cut these chains, which are the pashas, that's when we become Pashupati. And Shiva's another name is Pashupati. So we become one with Pashupati when we cut these chains. That's when we are liberated from the sequence of karma. Karma is reaction. Everybody is reacting to everything else. So we are not free at all. Right? And whatever habits we have picked up, the sanskaras are very habits. If we grow up in a family where people are cursing each other, then we'll also do it, right? And it's no fault of ours. We are only reacting. It's like things that are programmed into our self, into our vyavaharic, behavioral self. So consciousness then is that state when you're free from this karmic chain. And when you're free, when you're Shiva, then suddenly you have access to all kinds of insights. Then everything around you becomes clear. Or if you're a scientist, if you're a businessman, if you're a writer, all these ideas come from nowhere. So you get access to that space. It's a kind of a transcendental space. So to access the creativity within you, you become Shiva. And that's the only moment you are really being a free person. Because every other moment, we are bound by expectations and by instincts to only reacting to whatever situation we are in. So if we wanted to be free, because in that freedom, we are truly one, we counterintuitively in that freedom, you become one with Shiva. Shiva is only one, because one would imagine that, hey, then I am myself. I am this Ravan. No, no, you're not Ravan, because then all that goes away.
So
Okay, I think that was enough.
that, so I think, yeah, so like Archana ji said, this, we could talk forever, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this can go on. And I mean, I had only 3 things to ask. Archana, you want to ask anything which kind of connects with, or any last comments, thoughts?
You know, I'm always fascinated with the connections of the Spanda theory, you know, basically the string theory now we call it, and the consciousness. I know that there has been a lot of work done, you know, in this century by many Western, you know, scientists, but we had that written in our Vedas long back. So could you please talk about that?
Oh, absolutely. You know, the whole Kashmir Shaivite framework, there are 3 ways of looking at it. One is Spanda. There is vibration going on. You know, this Spanda is like the dance of Shiva goes on within us all the time. A certain idea comes, in the beginning, it's sort of unpleasant. We don't know that's that Aghor part of it. Then it sort of disappears. And then suddenly you find a resolution. That is the Vamadeva. You know, in life, you get blessings from the lady. I truly mean it. Women are wise. And that's why, you know, you have Vamadeva or Parvati, who's providing that grace. So, and then you get this insight. So this is Spanda. This is one way of looking at it. Another is Kula. You know, a lot of Kashmiris are called Kauls. My mother is a Kaul, for example. And Kula is this idea that all the devatas reside within you. The whole world is within you, and you can access that. And therefore, there were various Kaul practices. These Kaul practices are tantric practices.
Right.
They're a way to go within. And this path is sort of also scary, because when you go within, you are sort of trying to deconstruct the architecture that you are comfortable with, which you came to believe you are as you are growing up, through the sanskars, through all the comfort that we got in our mother's lap, or wherever, your dad giving you a hug, or whatever, our uncles and so on. So that gives us a certain comfort, but that comfort also becomes a kind of a prison, right? So how do we deconstruct it? And there are practices which are also dangerous, scary, because you need somebody to hold your hand. So this is the second way of doing it. The third is called Krama. Krama is where you're looking at the mystery of time. Because who are we? The past is all gone for each one of us. For everybody in this world, there's no past, that's all gone. And if you might say that's our memories, those memories are not reliable, because each time you think of the past, your memory takes on a different shape or shade, right? So if you are only now, and then we look at who, or we remember, try to remember who we were in the past. You remember your parents or grandparents and this and that, and then we project to our children and future. And this is the work of Kali, you know, of time as a goddess. And that was another way that you could go within and see yourself. And through that, find that connection to the Shiva within you. Because ultimately, you know, we are all fearful. Life is beautiful, but life is also fearful. You know, that poison, that halal poison, which we are carrying all the time. And we don't want to tell anybody else. We put on this very brave face, you know, fantastic, life is great. But actually we have that fear. But once you are one with Shiva, because Shiva transcends space and time, all our fear comes from the complex of space and time, right? Because we want to hold on to it. It's beautiful. The dance is beautiful. The dance of nature, Prakriti is beautiful. So once you do that transcendent, then you become Nirbhay. That's when you have total freedom. So all the practices that we have were a way to, for each individual, everybody is equal in this. Everybody has the potential to obtain this power within them, these siddhis. That's why Shiva was also called what? Siddha, right? He was also called, he is the ultimate siddha. So each person can become that Siddha. So I think this is the most extraordinary approach to life, to empowerment, to equality. There's no hierarchy, there's no gender, there's nothing. Everybody's equal. Everybody has within them all dualities, including the genders. You know, the West is right now confused. Look at this whole gender stuff. People have gone crazy, right? Because they're totally confused, because they're looking at things in terms of things. And it's male or female, or there is something in between. No, everything in the Vedic framework is within each one of us. All the dualities are within us. And how do we transcend those dualities? And it's not that we are running away from dualities. They're beautiful, because dualities is what creates attachment. If there were no duality, if every human being looked the same, then of course we'd be bored, right? So it's that differences, and how do we use that to lead us through that samudra manthan within, to lead us to this extraordinary, amazing insight, which is what life is all about.
So before vote of thanks, 3 books or 3 things that we should all try to read. One you already said. Okay.
One, everybody should read it. Yoga Vasishta. There is a translation by Swami Venkateshananda. Very, very nicely done. State University of New York Press. It's maybe $20–25. What else? What else is easily available? I don't know. You can read some of my books.
Yeah,
yes, absolutely.
Please recommend the one that you think we can digest and understand.
Oh, my book's very simple. I even wrote an autobiography. It's called The Circle of Memory.
Okay.
And it's only if I can even send you a PDF copy, but it's 99 cents.
Everybody on this forum can afford it. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's only 99 cents.
I think everyone on this forum should buy all Subhashji's books. I mean, they are fascinating. I have tried to read at least 2 of them. So, I mean, I still have a long ways to go. But honestly speaking, they are so amazing and so fascinating. You know, it gives you an idea about how, you know, rich our scriptures and culture and heritage has been, and how much Kashmir has actually contributed to the world of what it was, science, literature, aesthetics, you know, everything, yoga. And we don't even know that. We don't even know about 1% of it.
Yeah, Patanjali's Yoga Sutra.
Exactly.
Patanjali was Kashmiri. The Charak Samhita latest revision was done by Patanjali. So that is also from Kashmir. And yeah, truly central place in the history of the world, I think. It's not gotten its due.
Exactly.
We need to reclaim it. And then it'll also help people, bad people, if they knew what their past was, they might also change their ways. One can always be hopeful.
Great note.
Absolutely.
Great note.
So yes, I mean, and Kashmiri Shaivism, we haven't even you know, kind of delved into that. You just briefly talked about these kramas and all that. I happened to read a little bit about Abhinav Gupta, and he has, you know, obviously written extensively and contributed extensively to these kramas and ritualistic actually practices where people were trying to get to the ultimate. These were, I hope I'm right, when they were doing these Kali practices or the tantric practices, it was a way to reach to basically the ultimate goal of you know, attaining Shiva within yourself. So yeah, so much more to talk about, but I guess that every good thing has to come to an end, but hopefully we'll have these conversations again and carry on, you know, the next segment of you know, especially the work that you have written, your books, you've authored many of them. And so, but today we have to thank you. Today we have just touched basically the tip of the iceberg, the sorry, the frozen sea of knowledge that you hold within yourself, Subhashji. The enormity and the depth of this is like mind-blowing. and we can't even conceive like where to begin and where it ends. But thank you for today, and thank you especially for being our spokesperson and of Kashmiri Pandits. We are so proud that you represent us in circles which are at the highest level of knowledge and everything that kind of people can think of. And I thank the audience today for taking the time the Saturday morning off for attending this session, incredible session. And hopefully we have started a dialogue, a conversation with Subhashji, which will go further in more sessions. And thank you to Sanjay ji for, as usual, moderating a very wonderful and amazing session. Thank you to Indu and Neetu for always working behind the scene and making the programs, so smooth, and that we don't ever have any problems. We will be sharing this link to all our members and non-members in case obviously they have missed it, and also to our community members overseas. Thank you, Subhashji. As always, it has been a pleasure and honor for us to have you on our program, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Thank you, Archana ji. Thank you, Sanjay ji. This ZoomDub is a great dub. It's wonderful.
It's a great
you can see the zoom.
Yeah,
the moon,
from
that's
yeah.
the whole thing. Yes.
Very well.
Hopefully many more moons. Thank you, Subhashji.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
And thank you, everyone. Namaskar. And have a great weekend. And happy Father's Day, by the way.
Thank you
to everybody. Thank you.
To all the wonderful Father's Day. Happy Father's Day.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.